Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video will be entitled The Gong Show, which was produced by none other than Chuck Barris. Alright, now let me get into Chuck Barris's background. Charles Hirsch Barris. Yes, he's Jewish. He was born to a Jewish family in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on June 3rd, 1929. He was known as an American game show creator, producer, and host. Barris is best known, just like Jerry Springer is best known for his Jerry Springer show, which is a social engineering, destruction, pacification, and control tool of the CIA Hollywood. Well, so was Chuck Barris. Chuck Barris was known for hosting his Gong Show and creating the dating game and the newlywed game. He was also a songwriter who wrote Palisades Park, which was recorded by Freddie Cannon. It was also recorded by the Ramones. Chuck Barris wrote an autobiography titled Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, which was later made into a film by the same name and directed by George Clooney. Remember, George Clooney was a neighbor of Peter Falk on North Roxbury Road when he lived with his aunt, Rosemary Clooney, in the George Gershwin house at 2019 North Roxbury Drive. George Clooney lived. You should know that Chuck Barris, again his real name Charles Hirsch Barris, proclaimed that he worked for the CIA as a professional assassin for the CIA, and is attributed to having murdered 33 people. Alright, he later denied it. Then they got a CIA publicist to deny it. You know, the CIA's position on all things rumor, innuendo, or fact is to neither confirm nor deny anything. You know, it's like Sergeant Schultz from Hogan's Heroes, right? I see nothing, I hear nothing, I know nothing. That is the policy of the Central Intelligence Agency, which does have an assassination unit, no doubt. Anyway, in 1984, Chuck Barris wrote an autobiography, The Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, where he stated that he worked for the Central Intelligence Agency as an assassin during the 1960s and 1970s in Southeast Asia, which would be Vietnam, Latin America, and the Middle East. Those three CIA zones. Okay? In an interview on NBC's Today Show in 1984, Chuck Barris admitted to having made up the story. No, he was quoted as saying, "I was never a CIA hitman. I never did those things. I once applied for the CIA, and while I was going through the process, I got a job and went on television. But I have always wondered what would have happened if had I done both." Okay, well, that's a mendacity unto itself, because if you're a member of the Screen Actors Guild and you're a professional person being paid in Hollywood, you work for the CIA. I don't care if your name is Sharon Tate, or if your name is Johnny Carson, or if your name is Peter Falk, or if your name is George Gershwin, or Ira Gershwin, or your name is Elizabeth Montgomery, or your name is Jimmy Stewart, or Jack Benny, or Lucille Ball. You work for CIA. If your name is Ronald Reagan, or Jerry Lewis, who both live on St. Cloud Road, or your name is Leonard Nimoy and you live on Stone Canyon Road, or your name is Art Linkletter and you live on Bel Air Road, or your name is Julio Iglesias, or Zsa Zsa Gabor, or your name is Lachlan Murdoch and you live in the Beverly Hillbillies mansion, you work for CIA. That is a CIA house. North Roxbury Drive is a CIA neighborhood. The murder site of Sharon Tate, where Oliver Silverstein Stone visited Timothy Leary on St. Paddy's Day in 1996, that is a CIA cul-de-sac known as Sunbrook Drive, which is a part of the murder scene. It is an essential and integral part of the murder scene. It's on the same terrace as the Doppelganger evil twin home, where the murder could be rehearsed for hours, days, before actually committed by NATO troops. Anyway, I do believe it's a fact that Chuck Barris did work for the CIA, at least insofar as the social engineering of his television shows were socially engineered. Okay? And as far as him being a professional assassin, I have no knowledge of that other than he typed it. So he either committed libel in his own autobiography, or it's just another cackling cacophony of chaos diversion, which is pretty standard in all cover concealment stories. Got to have a cover story, and you got to have diversion. Anyway, Chuck Barris partnered with a younger man known as Burt Sugarman. And I'm going to get to that in a moment. You should know that Chuck Barris was married 3 times: Lynn Levy, Robin Altman, and Mary Clagett, who he died while still married to her. And he died in Palisades, New York. He was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Again, June 3rd, 1929. He lived to age 87. Anyway, during his television work, he partnered with Burt Sugarman. Now that's important. Very important, because Burt Sugarman was born in Los Angeles, and he was born January 4th, 1939. He lived till age 84. No, he is 84 years old. He's alive and well in Los Angeles today. He's married 3 times. He's currently married to Mary Hart. You may remember Mary Hart. She was a beauty queen that became known for her hosting of one of those Hollywood shows. I guess best known for Entertainment Tonight, which was a gossip show. Mary Joanna Huram. So that's Hart is not her real name. Her name is Mary Joanna Huram. She was born in Madison, South Dakota. She was raised in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and Denmark. She speaks English, Danish, and Swedish fluently. She graduated from Augustana Academy in 1968 and from Augustana College in Sioux Falls in 1972. She was crowned Miss South Dakota in 1970. She was a semi-finalist in the Miss America 1971 pageant. When in high school, she anchored her own talk show on an NBC affiliate, KSFY Television in Sioux Falls. Now, in the whole scheme of things, the Mary Hart is irrelevant to this story. She's just the latest person who converted herself to Judaism to be like her husband, Burt Sugarman, who's Jewish. Burt Sugarman may be best known for producing The Midnight Special, which was an iconic television show that presented, much in the same way Bill Graham presented all the Warner Brothers and Columbia Pictures artists of the day in the 70s and 80s. And they also had social engineering messages. They had Cass Elliot appear on a Midnight Special in 1972 with John Denver hosting. And Cass Elliot told the audience to vote. That was the way to solve our problems. You notice that voting didn't solve the Vietnam War. It didn't prevent any terrorist attacks. It didn't do a damn thing. So they want to promote voting because they want to promote poppycock. The best thing you could ever do is to have a dozen loaded weapons in your home and to never vote again. Never vote, because it doesn't make any difference. It validates the matrix. It validates that voting matters when it's completely irrelevant. Do you want to have Dianne Feinstein, a 90-year-old senator? Do you want to have Andrew Cuomo be your governor, or a fake governor named Ron DeSantis, whose military intelligence, whose Navy enhanced interrogation in Fallujah and Guantanamo Bay and went to Yale and Harvard Law? You want him to be your fake governor or your fake president? You want Gavin Newsom, sponsored by Gordon Getty, and the Getty Museum to be your fake governor? You want Nancy Pelosi to be your Speaker of the House, age 83, and her private banker husband, the styrofoam hammer, drunk driving, Porsche Carrera crashing, killer of his older brother David? You want him to be your banker? I don't think so. Anyway, Burton Roy Sugarman was born January 4th, 1939, and he was involved with Celebrity Sweepstakes, Woo, The Wizard of Oz. Boy, they really like to rinse and repeat The Wizard of Oz, don't they? He also produced a short-lived television series known as The Richard Pryor Show. He also owned stock in the old Tucson Corporation, and he also owned part of the old Vegas amusement parks located in Arizona and Nevada. He produced motion pictures Kiss Me Goodbye, Extremities, Children of the Lesser God. He was the executive producer of Crimes of the Heart in 1986. And like I said, he was a co-producer of the Newlywed Game Show in 1988. He was part of the Chuck Barris Industries, which was renamed later as Goober Peters Entertainment Company. Eventually it was sold to Sony. Well, that's not a surprise. Sony was sold to Amazon. Sony owns MGM. They own MGM Resorts. They own TriStar Pictures. They own Goober Peters Entertainment Company. They own The Gong Show. They own The Newlyweds. They own The Dating Game. Amazon owns Whole Foods. What else do you want to know? And Jeffrey Bezos is not the founder. He's the fake founder, right? He went to Princeton. He worked at Bankers Trust Company in New York. You can't trust a banker from Bankers Trust. I mean, they're telling you don't trust me, right? In the name, Bankers Trust. But the most disturbing thing about Burt Sugarman, who's a partner with Chuck Barris, is before he wed Mary Hart, who converted to Judaism, he was married to Carol Wayne, the matinee lady of the Johnny Carson Tonight Show, The Tonight Show with NBC, starring Johnny Carson. Carol Wayne was married to Burt Sugarman from 1975 to 1980, 5 years. She was married three times herself. Carol Wayne. Uh-oh, I got a technical problem. You remember Carol Wayne was murdered in Mexico by Ed Durston. Okay? Carol Wayne was murdered by Ed Durston, who murdered Diane Linkletter at age 20, baking cookies on a Saturday morning in the Shoreham Towers, where she was thrown out her window or balcony at 9 a.m. in the morning on October 4th, 1969, barely 2 months after Sharon Tate was murdered. Art Linkletter's youngest child, he had 5 children. His youngest child was Diane, age 20, face planted into the sidewalk at 1211 North Horn Avenue. Carol Wayne was murdered on January 13th. Well, that's an estimate. We don't know when she died. Age 42 in Mazatlán, Colima, Mexico. Mazatlán, Colima, Mexico, at an expensive upscale resort where she was on a date with Ed Durston. He packed her bags, left them at will call, and flew back to Los Angeles. 3 days later, her dead, drowned body was found in a lagoon in close proximity to the resort by a local fisherman, and she's dead as a doornail at age 42. Ed Durston is associated with the murder of Diane Linkletter in 1969. 4 days later, his next-door neighbor, located at 1211 North Horn Avenue, Connie Monty, age 31, a married lady. She's found dead of toxic barbiturate poisoning. She's next-door neighbors with Ed Durston. That's 2 women that he knows very well, both murdered within 4 days of each other in October 1969. Then he's associated with the disappearance and death of Carol Marie Wayne, who was born in Chicago, just like Robert Conrad, not his real name. born in 1942, and she died in 1942 after going on a date with Ed Durston out of town. And before she was married to Burt Sugarman, she was married to Barry Feinstein, who's a CIA photographer who's taken photographs of all the CIA crisis actors that you'd know. And before that, she was married to Loretto Serra for 2 years, 1965 to 67. She was married to Barry Feinstein, 1969 to 1974, another 5-year marriage. And then Burt Sugarman from 1975 to 1980, and dead as a doornail by 1985, January 13th, age 42. Anyway, I find this, consistent with everything with William Holden, everything consistent with Natalie Wood, everything consistent with Stephanie Powers, Sharon Tate, Noreen Kidd Shatner, William Shatner's third wife. He would have had 4 divorces, except that the wife, Noreen Kidd, that he was divorcing, that he had filed for divorce 11 months into their marriage. They didn't even make their 1-year anniversary, and he's already filing for divorce and denying spousal support in his petition in Los Angeles County. She was murdered before they had a chance to divorce. So William Shatner's only been divorced 3 times because one of his wives was murdered. This is just par for the course. Caroline Jones, married to the Jewish television producer. I already forgot his name. Aaron Spelling. Aaron Spelling, married to Carol Jones, who was featured in with Elvis Presley in New Orleans, a CIA port facility. In that film, that it was a really well done film with Elvis Presley. Then she goes on to become Morticia Adams in The Addams Family with Gomez, John Aston, who plays her adorable husband, right? These people are all compromised in a big way. Anyway, Chuck Barris is definitely a CIA operative, without a doubt. And because he has a producer, director, hosting role, I think he's fairly high up in the cult. And that is why he lived till age 87. Because if he wasn't so senior status, he would have been done away with earlier. Here's what I want to tell you about Philadelphia, Pennsylvania people. Okay, the creators for the Columbo television show, Richard Levinson and William Link, they're basically the same age. They were born in 1934-33. William Link was born first in December 15th, 1933. Richard Levinson was born next in August 7th, 1934. Noam Chomsky was born before them, just a few years. Noam Chomsky, who is a CIA linguistics crisis actor for mostly Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He was born in Philadelphia on December 7th, 1928. He's from Philadelphia. He's Jewish. Richard Levinson is Jewish. William Link is Jewish. Noam Chomsky is Jewish. Chuck Barris is born in Philadelphia on June 3rd, 1929. Don't you see? You see a pattern here, people? Do you see a pattern here? I do. Charles Hirsch Barish. He's Jewish. He's born in Philadelphia in 1929, right after Noam Chomsky. I mean, like right after Noam Chomsky, within 5 months. Noam Chomsky, Jewish, born in Philadelphia. Chuck Barris, Gong Show, born in Philadelphia. William Link, Jewish, born in Philadelphia a couple years later. Richard Levinson, born in Philadelphia a couple years later. Frank Fiorini, that you know is Frank Sturgis. He's supposedly a United States Marine and Italian. He was born in Philadelphia on December 9th, 1924. So he's the senior member of this team. He was involved with the training of the CIA troops for Fidel Castro to overthrow the Batista regime. He was involved with Fidel Castro and his brother Raul. He was involved then with Operation 40, which is an assassination team run out of Miami Lakes, Florida. He was associated with the Bay of Pigs invasion. He's associated with the John Kennedy assassination. He's associated with Watergate. He was one of the 6 burglars that was arrested, was Frank Sturgis, born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, just before Noam Chomsky was. You see a pattern here, people? I got a CIA assassin from the United States Marines known as Frank Sturgis, who's really Frank Fiorini. I've got Chuck Barris, I got Noam Chomsky, I got William Link, I got Richard Levinson. That's 5. And they are all born and raised in Philadelphia. That's 5 CIA operatives coming out of Philadelphia. 5. They are all about the same age. They're all within a few years of each other. Then I have Jerry Springer. He is born in London and magically transports himself, over to Cincinnati, Ohio, where he becomes the mayor of Cincinnati. That was where Donald DeFreeze, the president of the SLA, Symbionese Liberation Army, was. That's where Charlie Miles Mannix drove a borrowed car to Los Angeles and then was later arrested for Grand Theft Auto when it was a case of borrowing a car but crossing state lines. Had a long time prison record for borrowing a car and having a $25 IRS refund check made out to a different person. Hadn't been cashed yet. All right, you should know that Abigail Folger, Jose Menendez, Jerry Springer, Leslie Abramson, and Don McLean, they're all the same age too. So Abigail Folger was born out in San Francisco, lived in Portola Valley and Pacific Heights, San Francisco. She's the most classy person of everyone I met. I mean, Noam Chomsky is pretty far down. I would put, Chuck Barris above Noam Chomsky in terms of etiquette. In terms of linguistics, I'd put Abigail Folger many levels above Noam Chomsky, who's like a Cub Scout, flailing away. But Abigail Folger played classical piano. She spoke fluent French. She shopped and lived in Paris. She attended Radcliffe Harvard and later Harvard and has a master's degree in art history from Harvard in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's a CIA school. And Abigail Folger is basically the same age as Jerry Springer. She's the same age as Jose Menendez within a couple months. She's the same age as Leslie Abramson, who attended Queens College at the exact same time that Jose Menendez attended Queens College. Then Leslie Hope Abramson, who's Jewish, she goes on to represent Jose Menendez's son, Eric Menendez, in the fake assassination of his father. He didn't kill his father. That's just like the Charlie Fake Manson story. Don McLean, he's the same age as Abigail Folger, and he comes out of New Rochelle, New York. That's where Jerome Kohlberg came out of. The private banker for KKR, and Bear Stearns partnered with George Roberts and Henry Kravitz, and they end up on Sand Hill Road. The last company to see Erin Valente alive before she uttered those famous words, "It's all a game, it's a thought experiment, we're in the Matrix." He came out of New Rochelle, New York. Just like Don McLean and his fake song, and American Pie. American Pie. He didn't write that song. Don McLean did not write that song. And let me give you some reasons why they can't even decide what dates that Don McLean wrote the song. Don McLean doesn't seem to remember what dates he wrote the song. It was reported that the song was written in Sarasota Springs, New York. However, years later, decades later, Don McLean officially denied that, and he said that he did not write the song in Sarasota Springs, New York. That it was written in Cold Springs, New York, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Well, I have no doubt the song could have been written in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, because that's where all the CIA Jewish spooks are. And you know that Don McLean had 2 Jewish managers, do you not? So it doesn't really make any difference if Don McLean was Jewish or not. It appears he's not. He's Italian and Scottish, allegedly. But the thing is that he's Jewish managed, Jewish controlled, and the lyrics of American Pie are very New World Order. And there are things that are in this song that couldn't have possibly been written by Don McLean himself. Let me give you an example. Okay? In the lyrics, darn it, in the lyrics of American Pie, helter skelter in a summer swelter are in that song. Well, we don't know when the song was written, but it was written after the Sharon Tate NATO bayonet attack. And it was written, you know, sometime during 1970, I believe, you know, probably shortly after the NATO attack. It was first performed in March 1971 publicly. Don McLean claims it was performed, I believe, at Temple University for the first time, if I got that right. Temple University in Philadelphia, where he opened for Laura Nyro, who was a folk artist. That was March 14th, 1971. This is the official declaration by Don McLean that he insists that the song made its debut at Temple University in Philadelphia. Okay, well, the song had to be written before March 14th, 1971. But when you say helter skelter in a summer swelter, you're referring to Los Angeles, that was a heat wave weekend when Sharon Tate and Abigail Folger were bayoneted, as was Lena LaBianca, who is the same ages as, he's a little older than Noam Chomsky and William Link and Richard Levinson. He's closer in age to Frank Sturgis. Lena LaBianca was murdered in Los Angeles on a Sunday morning in a sweltering weekend where the temperatures got up to about 95 degrees, which is very hot because most people in Los Angeles and in Benedict Canyon and in Silver Creek River Park, they don't have air conditioning. So everyone keeps their windows open, which would explain how you can gain access to these properties. They're all unlocked. Not to mention that the military has the keys to all these homes anyway. And the point is that how in the world would a New Yorker in Cold Springs, New York, 25-year-old Don McLean, how the heck would he know that it was a sweltering summer in Los Angeles when Helter Skelter was written on the wall of the Karina LaBianca kitchen? I think they wrote "Death to Pigs" on the refrigerator. Anyway, I don't think it is impossible in a million years that Don McLean would know that it was a heat wave weekend in August when Sharon Tate was bayoneted to death. There's no way he could know that. But the clandestine service, they knew it because they performed the murder along with NATO soldiers. All right, you see what I'm saying here? All right, I'm going to leave you with another final quote that goes to Brainstorm, which was the last film that Natalie Wood appeared in with Christopher Walken. And that film was produced and directed by Douglas Trumbull, whose father was in the aeronautics and space industry and worked on the set of The Wizard of Oz in 1939. Douglas Hunt's father worked on The Wizard of Oz. Douglas Hunt Trumbull did not attend university. He went to El Camino Community College in Los Angeles. But he did work for Graphic Films in Los Angeles, which had a contract with the United States Air Force and NATO. He worked on short films such as To the Moon and Beyond, which appeared in spaceflight in 1964 New York World Fair. He worked with Stanley Kubrick in 2001 A Space Odyssey. Was he involved with the Apollo moon landing photographs at Norton Air Force Base in San Bernardino? I don't know. It's entirely possible that he was on the set when they filmed the moon landings. It's entirely possible. You know, NASA has now backed off on the moon landing, saying that, yeah, the pictures in Life magazine were produced in a studio, but we really did go. Just those pictures didn't turn out well. That's kind of the sort of the thing. Don't you think it's weird that the television had these grainy black and white images and then they're pristinely perfect in the Life magazine spread? No way. Those are professional studio produced photographs. And it is possible that Douglas Hunt Trumbull was involved in that. Anyway, after Natalie Wood was murdered in Santa Catalina Harbor, He also appeared in The Andromeda Strain, which was a COVID-19 film. If you didn't know. That was from 71, 72, something like that. He collaborated in The Deer Hunter and worked with Stephen Bochco, who was a screenwriter of several of the Columbo episodes. So this guy's plugged in. Anyway, after Natalie Wood was murdered, it took 2 years to finish the film. They used Natalie Wood's younger sister, Lana Wood, to help finish it off. The studios were locked, and then I want to give you a quote. Douglas Turnbull was so demoralized by the process of finishing Brainstorm that he was quoted as saying this. In 1983, when they finished the film, he resigned from Hollywood, if it's possible. You know it's not possible, right? He'd had so many disagreements with MGM, which owned Sharon Tate and owned Brainstorm and owned Natalie Wood. Trumbull opted to never direct a Hollywood film again. In 1983, he stated, "I have no interest in doing another Hollywood feature film. Absolutely none. The movie business is totally screwed up that I don't have the energy to invest 3 or 4 years in a feature film. Movie making is like waging war. It destroys your personal life too. The people who can survive the process of making films have largely given up their personal lives in order to do just that. Just because it's a battle to make a movie. And in doing that, they've isolated themselves from the very audience that they're trying to reach." And that's very prophetic, because that's true about the music business. That's true if your name is Neil Young. That is true if your name is David Crosby. That is true if your name is Judy Garland, Dean Martin, Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra. That is true if your name is Paul McCartney or John Lennon. In other words, you can't write your music. Your music's going to get edited, deleted, ignored, or you're going to have to cover another person's lyric. And that is definitely the case with Don McLean, who is a fake folk rock star. Okay? Thanks for listening. Have a great day. You got to crack the code and break the alibi. That's what Columbo taught us. Take care.